Oh yeah, there we are. Good evening, Johnny Jane here. Let me make sure I have sound and give a few people a chance to show up a little bit before I get rolling here. And yesterday I was talking about what the Christians and we have sound, yay. I was talking about what the Christians and TERFs have to say. And today it just keeps coming. It just keeps coming. And there's really no debate here. There is just absolutely no debate here. We're born this way. Clinical studies are showing that everything we say about ourselves is true. And see, we have a bold fool. And everything that are detractors, and I don't. It's not even. I don't think detractor is a strong enough word. These people are committed to like erasing transgender people, just queers in general. And really, if the mighty white Christians have their way, if you're not cisgendered, heterosexual Christian, make above $50,000 a year, you got problems. But today, I think it was today. Where the fuck did that go? Here it is. Yeah, this was from the other day, 23rd. This is by Phelan Fairchild, transgender author, comedian, actor, filmmaker, LGBTQ and women's rights activist. Trump war against trans Americans continues as CDC replaces LGBTQ references with LGB. In the ongoing war on transgender and non-binary Americans, the Trump administration has scrubbed the official website of the Center for Disease Control of all references to transgender and non-binary identities on specific pages related to queer youth, while also deleting transgender statistics from the 2015 and 2017 Youth Risk Anniversary of the United States Health Department, the Office of Civil Rights, removing all language applying to transgender identities, which led the Trump administration to inevitably challenge the inclusion of all LGBT people within the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That case is currently being deliberated in the Supreme Court, and a decision is expected in June. It would mark the first time in modern history that the legal system has been weaponized to further disenfranchise a minority and make them vulnerable to discrimination with no recourse. The fast and furious act of legislating transgender people out of existence has been ongoing since the first days of Donald Trump's 2016 election. So far, transgender people have been banned from serving in the military. Access to health care for members of the LGBT community has been compromised by the newly formed Division of Religious Freedom and Moral Conscience, which allows medical caregivers to legally refuse treatment to LGBT individuals if they are suspected of being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. Just yesterday, the Trump administration stripped all policies for transgender prison inmates that protected them from rape and abuse. LGBT people will also not be counted in the 2020 United States Census. The prevention of trans and non-binary folks from being recognized by government agencies leaves us in immediate and long-term danger. These decisions by the Trump administration effectively block the availability of research material, statistic information, and healthcare resources intended to assist and identify the most significant needs of our community. According to Fast Company, The Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity removed a number of explanations and resources about discrimination against LGBT people and HIV positive people, meaning that people facing housing discrimination cannot access information about their rights and current laws on those pages. So far, the Department of Education has rolled back protection for trans students, which protected them in schools and on campus. The Department of Health and Human Services, beyond implementing the new Division of Religious Freedom and Moral Conscience, has already largely abandoned identity language, with a 40% dip in use of the term transgender and a 25% dip in gender in favor of religious for trans people, which once prevented them from being evicted on the basis of their gender identity. They have already exchanged the word gender with sex in their policies. The Center for Disease Control, which is the department responsible for gathering and compiling statistical data such as violence against transgender people, the rate of suicide directly affecting this community, and the disproportionate number of homicides impacting mostly Black trans women, are no longer addressing these issues and have removed historical data referencing them. The Office of Personnel Management, which oversees all federal employees, removed its gender identity guidance page and replaced it with language that eliminates the references to trans and non-binary identities. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld a decision for the state of Texas to refuse benefits to spouses of LGBT federal employees. The Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, has promised to destroy the Equality Act written by Democrats in the House of Representatives, dubbing himself the Grim Reaper. Gotta ditch Mitch, baby. Dump Trump and ditch Mitch. McConnell and Senate Republicans, whose support is required to make it a law, hold mostly anti-LGBT views. This means no bills passed to Senate that can improve the quality of life for LGBT Americans will survive to become law. However, these same Republicans are rushing to implement as many anti-LGBT policies as possible, rolling back all Obama-era protections and weaponizing religion to directly harm LGBT people, which is totally contrary to all the principles that this republic was founded on. This is the sort of thing that our founding fathers were afraid of. H.L. Mencken called this shot 100 years ago. The Trump administration currently has a 90% approval rating among Republicans and evangelicals. This has only increased during the recent impeachment inquiry, leading many political experts to predict that Donald Trump will win his re-election bid in 2020. There's a scary thought. Tell me about yourself, CompuChan. Am I this freak you're talking about? Probably pimply-faced little kid fucking sitting in your mother's basement sucking soda pop pizzas while you're fucking 300-pounder. Bye. See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. I'm not a him, Chandler. Email, please. So let's take a look real quick at what the WPATH, USPATH, and EPATH, that's the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, is saying about this. And this is their response to the attempt to make it illegal to encourage a transgender child to be themselves. This is gonna criminalize not forcing the family of a transgender child to make that kid into a straight kid. This can criminalize it. There's 3 states that have already introduced legislation or are planning on introducing it. 4, Texas, South Carolina, and that was introduced in South Carolina. Texas, 4 states, Texas, Kentucky, South Carolina, and Georgia. Diversity in gender expression and variations in gender identity represent normative developmental processes for children and adolescents and are not inherently pathological aspects of the human experience. They're also not uniformly indicative of a future gender transition. These facts are substantiated by many reputable professional associations representing thousands of pediatric providers. Clinical guidelines for youth experiencing an incongruence between their gender identity and sex assigned at birth have been published, are widely used nationally, and are based on the current evidence. These guidelines support the use of intervention for appropriately assessed minors. The following organizations have pediatric clinical guidelines and/or policy statements on these issues: the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, American Academy of Pediatrics, American Psychological Association, and the Endocrine Society. In response to recent critiques of supportive health interventions for transgender and gender diverse youth, the board of directors of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, its US chapter, and its European chapter have authorized the following statement: the process of pursuing gender transition is highly individualized, based on the youth situation, family concerns, and various other factors. Thus, there is no one-size-fits-all clinical intervention. However, in general, mental health and medical professionals conduct evaluations of each youth/family to ensure that interventions used to promote emotional and psychological wellness in these youth are appropriate and meet the young person's specific mental health and medical needs. As a result, professionals with experience and training to understand adolescent development and family dynamics are poised to understand the underlying factors behind a specific clinical presentation. Professionals who are experienced working with youth and families can distinguish parents who may be cautious and concerned from parents who might be pushing for medical changes when their child is not ready for them. The best interests of the child are always paramount for any responsible licensed provider. That's an important point to look at a little bit. Because you've got both factors working in the parents. Parenting, parents project a lot of themselves into their kids. I mean, that's what being a parent is about, and they have expectations of their kids. And you have both of those dynamics at work with these kids. And the third one is the one that really, it's that affirming the child's expressions of themselves. And it really comes down in all children. It just comes down to letting them choose their hairstyle, what they want to wear, and what they want to play with. Just let them be themselves. And when they do this, without pushing the kid in either direction, just let that kid just be themselves. The results have just been amazing. These kids are just thriving. Some critics have claimed high rates of regret regarding irreversible treatments or procedures such as reconstructive surgeries, implying that children are forced to undergo treatments that they may regret. There are no studies to support these claims. However, recent studies show only a very small percentage of people who undergo transition as adults, when irreversible procedures may be administered, regret doing so. Roughly 1 to 3%, which is a small number compared with rates of regret reported for much more common procedures. Most people who have regrets do so because of a lack of support or acceptance from their family, support, social groups, work, or other organizations. Conversely, the benefits that these medically necessary interventions have for the overwhelming majority of youth whose identities are incongruent with their sex assigned at birth are well documented. Providers who collaboratively assess youth's understanding of themselves, their gender identity, and their ability to make informed decisions regarding medical and surgical interventions, which are not offered prior to puberty and never without the youth's assent, play a very important role in minimizing future regret. I think it also needs to be pointed out that I don't know what the numbers are. I haven't really been able to see what the numbers are, but it's only about 20% get bottom surgery. Now, it's not that 80% don't want it. There's that's broken out. There's don't want it but can't have it because of health reasons, and want it but can't afford it. But still, a lot of us just like learn to cope with it and get to know ourselves as we're built and live with it. And those of us who are in accepting, supportive environments are doing pretty good. Some critics have called gender care child abuse. Providing care for a transgender child or adolescent is a serious undertaking, which respects the best interests of each individual child. Withdrawing care for all transgender youth or adults or threatening to criminalize conscientious healthcare providers who work with transgender patients or clients using evidence-based care is a clear abuse of administrative and legislative power. Legislation that opposes needed treatment is of grave concern as it sustains harmful misconceptions about transgender youth and adults, as well as gender transition processes in general. Also deviates medical protocols, thus driving more people to seek services from providers who are willing to ignore the validated protocols that encourage responsible care. We might as well, let me just take a quick peek and see what kind of trolls are here. That's okay, Chandler. Thank you. Thank you, Dragon. No, I appreciate that, Chandler. You might not have known. I'm a transgender person, and I'm just not like my presentation is kind of gender neutral. And I'm 65, and I'm too lazy to like work on my voice and shit like that. This is me. You know, I really. I'm not your standard issue trans person. We're all individual. We're all different, as like the WPATH thing said. I didn't fight with my parents about it. I didn't insist. No, that's okay. That's okay. You might not have known. You know. It's okay. I didn't fight with my parents about it. I just shut up and played along, and as best I could. Yeah, hi Metal Jeebus. The Saga's having a potluck, and I'm making some tzatziki sauce and bringing some vegetables, fresh vegetables to dip in it. And I pickled a bunch of stuff. Like I put up some, I made some pot lagelle, which is like garlic and eggplant basically, and some red peppers. I like to think I do, and I'm certainly like aligned with the parents on this one. No, I mean I just sent out a letter to my family and friends. The fuck did they're just ramping it up on everywhere against transgender people. They're trying to like eliminate us from society. And what's really crazy is that so many of us came out. You know, there aren't more of us. It's just there are more of us out in the open now because of changes that occurred during the Obama administration and really have been going on since the 70s. 1969 was the year that they lit up Stone. I mean, a lot of stuff got lit up in 1969. And although, the social unrest has subsided, we haven't been out in the streets like we were in the 60s since hardly, especially not since Kent State in 1971. But there's been a lot of work going on in the courtrooms and in legislative chambers and just in the communities of queer people getting to know their neighbors, establishing our position. Yeah, right. I know. As I'm still not sure. If Trump is like just a changing of the guard or a hostile takeover bid, and I'm not even sure which one would be more fucked up. That either one is fucked up. It's definitely more fucked up than it's ever been. I mean, it's just unbelievable what they just keep doing. And it's total criminal enterprise into the White House. Total criminal enterprise. This guy's been nothing but a grifter his whole life. Deadbeat Don. And you know that the Europeans, the Eastern Europeans, I don't want to call them Russians. Yeah. And no, are they in control of the Russian government or the Israeli government? When it comes to Russian trolls, it's like, and what it comes down to is that they're all like struggling to like maintain this like petrodollar economy, and we're gonna be dead. It's gonna kill us all. Planet's just gonna say fuck you. Planet's already starting to say fuck you. I do recall that. And Caitlyn Jenner made an ad walking into a crapper in the Trump Tower in New York, dude. Pandering. At the AMA, this is important. This is real important. This is like, as far as things that the transgender community needs banned. This is like number one on the hit parade. The American Medical Association backs nationwide conversion therapy ban. The leading medical group throws its weight behind ending the discredited practice of trying to change one's sexual orientation or gender identity. This is by Tim Fitzsimmons, who he reports on Queer News for NBC. Token gay guy. Go away. Stupid notifications. The American Medical Association hello. Where'd it go? There it is. I hate it when it does that. The American Medical Association on Tuesday voted to support state and federal efforts to ban gay conversion therapy, throwing the weight of America's medical establishment behind ending the scientifically discredited practice of attempting to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. It is clear to the AMA that the conversion therapy needs to end in the United States, given the risk of deliberate harm to LGBTQ people, AMA board member Dr. William E. Kobler said in a statement shared with NBC News. Conversion therapy has no foundation as scientifically valid medical care and lacks credible evidence to support its efficacy or safety. Speaking on background, an AMA official said Tuesday's directive means that AMA will produce model legislation, woohoo, banning conversion therapy that can be distributed to state-level organizations since medical licensing happens at the state level, while simultaneously working on a federal effort. In August, a study found that 200,000 transgender people in the United States have been exposed to conversion therapy at some point in their lives. It didn't take much with me. I wasn't very big, and they didn't need professional help. Just no, girls don't have penises, and boys only cry when they bleed. And if you need something to cry about, we'll beat the crap out of you. And so I shut up, played along, and so I'm not real femmy because I wasn't allowed to be very femmy, and I never went like all Bruce Jenner and became an Olympic athlete or anything like that. I just kind of hung out. And this is me. this is what I turned out to be. I'm okay, I guess. I'm under no obligation to anybody to paint my face or dress any particular way. No, that's ridiculous anyway. It's all it's in how you are. I have to say it so again and again and again. It's like, this is the way we are. It's like, how did you know that you were right-handed or left-handed? How did you know that you're cisgender? It's like, okay, I'm a boy and it feels good and we're cool. When did you realize that? Well, there's parents who talk about kids seeing in kids like as young as 18 months old. Yeah, something's wrong there between their sex and their gender. Currently, 18 states and the District of Columbia ban conversion therapy for minors. According to the Movement Advancement Project, a think tank focused on LGBTQ issues. Recently, New York City hurried to repeal its conversion therapy ban because it prohibited the practice for minors and adults who, as discredited as the practice may be entitled under free speech protections to pursue the therapy for themselves. This is adults that blocked it. Oops. Historically, medical professionals have contributed to the stigmatization of LGBTQ individuals, so the AMA's active involvement in the LGBTQ health advocacy is incredibly important. Dr. Alex Chavez said, medical director for the nonprofit Trevor Project. The AMA support for ending conversion therapy furthers the work that the Trevor Project is doing across the country with our 50 Bills, 50 States campaign to protect LGBTQ youth from this dangerous and discredited practice. The AMA also has endorsed the creation of electronic health records that are inclusive of LGBTQ people. The newly amended, and El Rio has that, our local clinic. The newly amended policy now supports the voluntary inclusion of a transgender patient's preferred name and clinically relevant sex-specific anatomy and medical documentation, the AMA said in Tuesday's statement. Without this information, transgender people and patients and their specific healthcare needs cannot be identified or documented. The health disparities they experience cannot be addressed, and the provision of important healthcare services may not be delivered, Kobler stated. Chavez said the electronic health record change can help reduce the 50% of transgender individuals who delay seeking necessary health care because of legitimate fears of discrimination. The AMA has also endorsed a policy that encourages medical accreditation bodies to both continue to encourage and periodically reassess education on health issues related to sexual orientation and gender identity in the basic science, clinical care, and cultural competency curricula in medical school and residency programs. Yay, AMA. You missed that reading. The I read that at the beginning. You kind of came late. We're talking about the things that um, have happened since 2016 that have eroded the protections that were created under the Obama administration, brought a lot of transgender people out of the closet. That all of a sudden it's like, whoa. Where'd that go? All right, my browser's a little sluggish. Yeah, I read that first. Here, let me give you the link to it. It's a Medium article, a blog, LGBTQIA blog. Trump war against trans Americans continues as CDC replaces LGBTQ references with LGB. Basically, it's about erasing transgender people and who's behind it. I've been talking about this for a couple of days. What they're discovering is that the chromosomes don't really have so much, the X and the Y and all that shit. It all just has to do with your gametes. Gender, there's no such thing that they've been able to identify as a completely male or completely female brain. Gender is about your behavior. Gender is about the way you move yourself, by the way you pose, by the way you speak, by the way you clothe yourself, by the way you groom. Now, everything other than clothing and grooming, these are biological. This is determined by different centers of your brain that they found tend toward male behavior or female behavior, but there's no completely male or completely female brain that they've ever been able to identify. And what they found in transgender people is that the transgender person's brain structure and functions more closely related to those of the cisgender person of the opposite sex. It's basically it's about what's in your heart, not the body parts, and for some of us, it took me a lot of years, and I'm still wish I didn't have one, but I'm used to it. Okay, I got it. This is what I was born with. I made my deal with spirit. I gotta deliver what I came to the world with, intact as best I can. So I'm doing that. Other people have other reasons. No, I wish I didn't. I wish my junk was not what it is. My brain never could see my penis properly, and it's very distressing. It's gender dysphoria. Yeah, junk. That's it. Stuff between my legs. It's always been all wrong, and that's the dysphoria. It's just a total disconnect between what my brain sees of myself and what I see when I look down there and go, I don't even need to look down there. I'm just like the sensory input from it, like, oh, it needs to pee or whatever. But anyway, moving right along. Where were we? There was one more. Oh yeah, where's that? Okay, let's close that shit. Well, most often the one that's confused is the one that doesn't understand the transgender person. The transgender people aren't confused until you start telling them that they can't be transgender unless there's something wrong with them. Oh, crap. Oh, let's find that again. So, HRC just put out a handbook for parents of gender diverse kids. Well, let's go get that. Come on. Oh, and then we're gonna, if I still got any steam left, we're gonna get to this one too. Oh boy. Oh, here's no, that'd be a digression. Hello, where to go? There we go. Navigating transition-related care. A guide for parents and parents of gender-expansive children and teens. Let's take a look at how long this is. Well, this is pretty comprehensive. I think I'm just going to give you all the link to it. Well, that was one thing that does happen. And actually there have been, that does happen. That does happen. There's clinical protocols that they follow. And like if you were listening to the WPATH statement, is they're watching out for it. They're watching out for that in the parents. They're watching out for parents who are like pushing the kid to being straight when the kid's insisting that they're not. And that's what it comes down to, is that the child is persistent in insisting that they're the opposite gender of the sex they were assigned at birth, and that they're consistent in their display of it. And this is what they're watching out for. And people weed themselves out before they get, and just it's so important to understand that the kids, before they're reach puberty, before they reach Tanner stage 2 puberty, which is like between 10 and 12, those kids, nothing is being done to them except them being allowed to make their own decisions about their hair and their clothing and their toys. That's it. So when something like that happens, where the mother is putting it on the kid, the doctors will step in. They'll see it. It'll come out in the kid's therapy. That is a concern, but the medical professionals are aware of it. What they're more concerned with at this point is forcing the kids into something that's not working for the kid. And really, the results are fabulous. The kids are thriving. They're turning out. They're excelling in school. A lot of them making it big in the arts. Well, you have to shop around for sure. I trust him a whole lot more than your pastor. Okay. It comes down to the statistics. The numbers don't lie. And I do trust the professional associations to uphold their oath, the Hippocratic oath. That's why they're rejecting. There's absolutely no clinical support at all for conversion therapy. Everything there's no. The only reason that there's any resistance at all in New York was because of the First Amendment. That if somebody wants to get transgender surgery, gender affirming surgery, if the First Amendment supports their right to do that, then the First Amendment has to support the right of an adult seeking to cure themselves of queerness, if such a thing were possible. We're born this way. This is not a life choice. Being Christian is a life choice. That's a choice. I'm born this way, and I speak very clearly that, and all it took for me was shaving off the beard. Well, trauma's a funny thing. It doesn't go away easily, for sure. Have you got any links to something more substantial about this that I could look at? Hey, MS, happy day. Thanks for coming. Time to roll a doobie. I'm not sure what this is, other than grown south of here. But it's nice fat. They're nice fat buds, and the price is right. It's $35 for a half ounce delivered. But anyway, I think it's important that people understand that. We'll see if this. I haven't really been following the current initiative too closely. I know that the last one failed to get the support of the weed activists because of the way it favored big business and cut the small people out and the end users. So I don't know. They said they were going to replace it with something that's going to be acceptable, and it's supposed to be on the ballot in 2020. So we'll see. Already, and as long as I've had cops in here looking straight at the weed, they don't care. I'm in my home, they don't care. I've had them give me joints back. They gave me a joint back one time. She just didn't want to be bothered with the paperwork. It's like I didn't have my ID ready. So it was in my backpack, and he's on a bicycle, and it's like probably had another call that was more important, and he just gave me the joint back. He said, "Have a nice day." The feds just passed some kind of initiative decriminalizing marijuana at the federal level, passed out of the House committee this last week. Let's take a look at. I don't want to read the whole thing. There's a lot to it, but let's skim it. This is really important. I've seen a lot of, I saw a poll where less than half the kids under 25 said that they considered themselves to be 100% cisgender and heterosexual. And you're going to have these kids coming out more and more to their parents who are questioning their sexuality or their gender identity. It's like, well, okay, I've got this thing down there, but I feel this way. And parents need to be ready for it. You know, we're emerging, we're witnessing the emergence of the first generation of happy queer kids in the history of Western civilization. Well, you know, look at the history of civil rights law. Just actually, what all they're looking to do is amend the discrimination on the basis of sex to make it expressly clear that it's not just male or female, but there's also sexual orientation to consider, where people are discriminated against because of their homosexuality or bisexuality. And there's gender identity that, you know, that needs to be, you know, gender expression needs to be protected. What's the argument against it? Well, it's high time they did. Excuse me, by the time queer kids 7, 8, 9 years old, they're getting bullied. How do straight kids know to bully the queers that young? Anybody got an answer for that one? They're teaching hate. From, you know, this taught, oh, that was the other thing, sanctuary schools. The tomboys get it too. The rich bitches were just terrible at tomboys. Well, where's this sanctuary school shit? Where'd that go? Oh, well, fuck. I closed it. This is an outrage. You know, it's like they're fighting to well, there's strings. You know, when I put in sanctuary schools, it's on Lizette's wall. Let's go back up there. Sanctuary school districts. This is one fucking idiot. This is one guy and whatever his people are around him. It's a group called Our Watch Now, which is a husband and wife evangelical team. Sanctuary school districts. While sanctuary cities protect illegal immigrants, we're asking school boards to vote to become sanctuary school districts to protect parental rights and our children from the immoral agenda being imposed on families by the state. This is not an immoral agenda. It's opt-in, first of all. It's not a required course, and at least not in Arizona, or at least not in Tucson. And it's just teaching the existence of these kinds of people, especially to the youngsters. They're not encouraging or discouraging anything. You know, just laying it out. This is what it is. Leaders of sanctuary school districts do not, you know, this is one freak by the name of Tim Thompson. When I tried to search for it at Google, um, sanctuary schools, um, are about like not cooperating with immigration authorities. Is what sanctuary schools, the safe zone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, uh, one would think so, but there's people raise objections that need to be addressed. The I don't think that they really are making much of anything before middle school. Tim Thompson. Tim Thompson. He's an evangelical. It's a husband and wife evangelical team in Southern Arizona or Southern California. My point is that by the time the child reaches middle school, their gender identity forms between the age of 3 and 6, and sexual orientation isn't far behind it. It takes a child a little while to get like accustomed to that thing doing. It doesn't really like start doing anything very sexual until later. So like I had no idea when I was not quite 4 years old. That's the thing. I didn't know what it was for anything but peeing. That's my pee-pee. And I didn't know it was for anything else. I had no idea what my sexual orientation was going to be, but I knew that I was not a boy. And I really had to suppress innate feminine movement and posturing and behaviors. It's like, no, that's too fruity. You can't do that. I had to walk pigeon-toed for 6 months or so just to get the swish out of my hips on my walk. That was the only really bullying that I got over my gender. Was walking too fruity in high school, all male high school. I'm walking down the hall, just walking down the hall, not really thinking about the way I was walking. I was just walking, and like I was getting kicked in the ass because of my swish. Well, because if it's all taught in the home, then those kids from cisgender, heterosexual, strictly heterosexual, heteronormative homes, religious fanatics and so forth, teach their kids to bully the queer kids. I haven't tried. I get some bounce in my boob if I put a hitch in my step. I never tried. When I decided to finally shave off the beard, I was like 60 years old, and I was feeling silly. If I got too girly, I was feeling stupid. So I didn't push anything. This is me. This is me. I'm Tommy. I've always been Tommy, but Tommy's not a guy. This is exactly why it needs to be taught in the schools, Vince here. When it's taught in the homes, the children are taught to hate. Enough hate already. And then you want to take it one step further. When these children are taught in the middle school about things like STDs and contraception, instead of advocating complete abstinence, when the middle school curricula recognizes that these kids are going to become sexually active any minute now, and teaches them about condoms and disease prevention and pregnancy prevention, the disease rates and pregnancy rates drop. So what's a good reason for teaching it in the home? So it's certainly not, you know, the law needs to address verbal bullying too. The First Amendment is that, and the decision, the rulings on the First Amendment have pretty clearly defined the limits of protection. Harassment is not protected. Okay? It's not. The law needs to address the harassment just as much as the physical violence, because that's one leads to the other. Well, what do you call per-parenting? Kids who raise a Brock Turner? So, you know, what's per-parenting? That's per-parenting, all right. But there's still beyond the otherness, you know, there's need for this because of the teen pregnancy and disease transmission. No, the LGBTQ inclusion is incidental. You know, the vast majority of people are cisgender and heterosexual, and there's a whole lot of like teen pregnancy that can be avoided, and teen diseases that can be avoided with comprehensive sex education classes. There's just no rational reason to be fighting this. I just don't see it. No, there's absolutely no good reason to be discriminating against effeminate men or masculine women at all. Zero. And then to make any big deal about clothing or haircuts or any of that shit, colors. Go to gender reveal parties. Just don't blow anything up. It's been around for a long time. Let's take a quick peek at. Okay, here we go. Yeah, you're giving your fucking step in the breach with your families. A brief history of sex ed in America from Newsweek by Joanna Kornblatt on October 27, 2009. To prevent the immense evils of self-pollution, therefore, in our boys and students, they should always subsist on a plain, simple, unstimulating vegetable and water diet, and care should be taken that they do not eat too fast and are not excessive in quantity. They should never be kept too long at a time sitting confined or in active posture. They should never sleep on feathers. As Sylvester Graham's Lectures on Chastity in 1834. America's recent experience with abstinence-only sex education is merely the latest chapter in our long, sometimes ridiculous, to modernize anyway, history of efforts to control humankind's most basic drive. While the earliest sex ed pamphlets in the US addressed theology and nutrition, they were also obsessed with the immense evils of masturbation. Graham, who used wheat flour to create the cracker that now bears his name, traveled the East Coast in the 1830s, warning audiences that self-pollution was responsible for everything from warts and constipation to insanity and death. Health reformers in 19th century America associated bodily discipline with ideal manhood and used sex ed manuals to propagate that message. The Reverend John Todd's highly popular 1835 Student's Manual encouraged young men to overcome the secret vice of masturbation because ejaculation decreased energy and productivity. An article in the Boston Medical and Surgical Journal that same year likewise warned that ejaculation should be made but sparingly, since sturdy manhood loses its energy and bends under too frequent expenditure of this important secretion. The rapid urbanization of the late 1800s and early 1900s was accompanied by an increased interest in organized sex ed. As Americans moved from farms, where children might politely observe the mating of the family livestock, to cities ripe with temptation, public officials began to see a greater need for classroom instruction about the facts of life. The National Education Association first discussed the subject in 1892, passing a resolution that called for moral education in the schools. In 1913, Chicago became the first major city to implement sex ed for high schools. The program didn't last long, though. The Catholic Church soon launched a campaign against the initiative, helping force Ella Flagg Young, the superintendent of schools, to resign. It took rampant STDs during World War I to get the federal government involved in sex ed. In 1918, Congress passed the Chamberlain-Cahn Act, which allocated money to educate soldiers about syphilis and gonorrhea. During that time, Americans began to view sex ed as a public health issue. The American Hygiene Association, founded in 1914 as part of the Progressive Era social purity movement, helped teach soldiers about sexual hygiene throughout the war. Instructors used a machine called the stereomotograph to show soldiers microscopic slides of syphilis and gonorrhea organisms, as well as symptoms of diseases on the body of an actual soldier. Okay, this isn't that long. The earliest sex education film, Damaged Goods, warned soldiers of the consequences of syphilis. In the film, a man has sex with a prostitute the night before his wedding, gets syphilis, passes the disease on to his newborn baby, and then commits suicide. The film received positive reviews, with one critic writing, "American boys should be made to see it, for they are to become the American manhood, and the cleaner physically, the better." A 1919 report from the U.S. Department of Labor Children's Bureau likewise suggested that soldiers would have been better off if they had received sex instruction in school. The worries and doubts and brooding imposed by boys and girls of the adolescent period as a result of lack of simple knowledge is a cruelty on the part of any society that is able to furnish that instruction. Excuse me. It's all up here. And it gets worse when I'm talking so much, I'm inhaling a lot of dust. So I just got to keep my sinuses lubricated. The military sex ed programs inspired similar instruction in secondary schools. During the 1920s, schools began to integrate sex ed into their curriculum. Like the military, the schools experimented with using film to enhance sex ed. The American Social Hygiene Association produced The Gift of Life, which explicitly warned students about the solitary vice. Masturbation may seriously hinder a boy's progress towards vigorous manhood. It's a selfish, childish, stupid habit. Schools also tried using older media like literature to teach students about the birds and the bees. In 1920, an English teacher named Lucy S. Curtis wrote an influential article called Sex Instruction Through English Literature that encourages teachers to draw on classical literature when explaining sex to students. Read to them Lancelot's wild, passionate quest for the Holy Grail, she wrote, and they will enter into the bitter experience of a soul which has rendered itself incapable of receiving the full spiritual blessing through the sin of yielding to impure desire. During the so-called Roaring Decade, between 20 and 40% of U.S. school systems had programs in social hygiene and sexuality. Sex ed exploded over the next 3 decades. In the 1930s, U.S. Office of Education began to publish anyway, blah, 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 blah. Here's, let's just go. Although people, let's go to the end. Yeah, see here, when the AIDS and HIV pandemic began in the 1980s, however, proponents of sex ed found their positions strengthened. By the mid-1990s, every state had passed mandates for AIDS education, sometimes tied to general sex ed and sometimes not. But as some form of sex ed became inevitable in the era of HIV and AIDS, conservatives launched a movement to rebrand sex education as abstinence education. Religious conservatives helped add provisions for abstinence education to the 1996 Welfare Reform Act, and the federal government directed tens of millions of dollars to abstinence education programs for the first time. Although people stopped referring to it as self-pollution, masturbation was still much taboo 160 years after Sylvester Graham railed against it. At the 1994 United Nations Conference on AIDS, then Surgeon General Jocelyn Elders was asked about promoting masturbation to prevent young people from engaging in riskier sexual behavior. I think it is a part of human sexuality, and perhaps it should be taught. Her answer and the reaction to it ultimately forced her to resign. U.S. is really paradoxical, Irvine says. We have this massive sexualization of the media. Just think of the movie American Pie. But we're not allowed to talk about masturbation with teenagers. As for Graham, if he were suddenly to come back from the dead, he would surely be horrified. Nabisco's version of his cracker is now made with the very white flour they blame for increasing excitability and sensibility of the genital organs. And this brings us back full circle to why schools need to step in. What are the parents teaching these children in the homes? You know, we can't leave something like that to bad parenting. Bringing poor hygiene habits into public sex. No. There's good reason for it, and it's time for it to be honest. No, it's water in the cup. What's making me cough is dust in the air and talking so much. As a dusty ass town, I have chronic upper respiratory issues, allergies. I always have a little bit from the dust. My nose is always, my sinuses are always clogged, and I'm always getting postnasal drip and have to hack up a gob. It's always been that way. No, it's no medical crisis. I don't really know. I probably should, and I definitely need to quit smoking tobacco because a good portion of that dust is cigarette ash. That question is kind of ridiculous. 45 lies. There was no going trans. And what happens is that the satisfaction rate for transition is very, very high, over 95%. What people need to do is like stop worrying about transgender people. What possible impact do transgender people have on the lives of people who are upset with transgender people? I'm like, what's your fucking problem? No, I don't drink alcohol much. I barely drink enough to where it'd be a lie to say that I didn't drink at all. I mostly have water or smoothie in the cup. That's what's in the cup. Yeah, it's a big Bubba cup. Well, let's get back. Here's something. Oh boy, you guys have really been at it. Okay, let's get back to Vince here. His statement was, I do find it interesting that there seems to be increase of people that identify as gay these days. I think that deserves study again, nature versus nurture. It is interesting that Y chromosome is disappearing. I don't know that there are more people there are more gay people, or there are just more people admitting to it. That's really what cough is nothing. This cough, it gets bad, but that was nothing. It was horrible during pollen season. I drown in my boogers. I have to sleep sitting up. Um, 45 lies. Let's like keep it relevant. Well, see, that's the thing. Well, Chris, the question Chris has, why would you want to change gender? I just don't understand it. That's not what's happening. What people are doing is expressing their true gender that You're on the edge of disappearing, 45 lives. Just like let all the dog stuff go, please. That's not what's happening. Gender identity forms between the ages of 3 and 6. And you can't really change it. And in a small fraction of the people, our gender identity doesn't match our sex. Now, most of us are, well, just let the dog thing go. Okay, well, let me get to that. Chopping off a dog's nuts is not going to change its gender. Okay. Chris, that statement is inappropriate, and that's not what happens. There's enough, and it's not, it's more like converted rather than removed. Let me close some of this stuff down and see if there's anything relevant. I missed message in Tudorville. Okay, where's Tudorville? I haven't been to Tudorville. It's about a half hour. I've been going. I'm on now. I haven't been paying. Oh, well, no wonder I haven't been paying attention. It didn't show me any messages there. Brief history, get rid of that. Oh, I was going to go through this a little bit. This is mainly a guide to families who are seeking transition-related health care. Let's see, HRC, Human Rights Campaign, a guide for parents and guardians of gender-expansive children and teens. That's pretty comprehensive. Some families report gender dysphoria. There's an interesting statement about gender dysphoria. Some families report feeling a sense of clarity upon learning that their child has been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria refers to the distress a transgender person experiences when their body doesn't align with their internal sense of their gender, or as a result of public misgendering and mistreatment due to their transgender identity. While not all transgender people experience gender dysphoria, it is a common requirement in accessing certain medical care, like the surgery, and can help some families understand their child's distress, allowing them to move forward with transition with more confidence. While the diagnosis of gender dysphoria can open doors to treatment, there are concerns that this mental health diagnosis can potentially add a layer of stigma to transgender children, and many believe that access to gender-affirming care should not be dependent on misdiagnosis. I guess that says it. Well, it's your opinion as a misinformed layman. I really heartily suggest that you learn. Well, nobody's looking for special treatment, Vince here. I didn't ask him to leave. I asked him to just like drop the dog stuff. And I didn't disrespect anybody. And I answered it. Cutting a dog's nuts off is not going to change their gender. Nobody's asking for special treatment, Vince, here. What we're asking for is an end to the institutionalized discrimination against us. That happens. I don't need any special treatment. Well, you have to experience you really need to experience severe chronic acute gender dysphoria to understand why some people feel the need to get their genitals modified to bring them into congruence with their institutionalized discrimination against transgender people. Where were you at the beginning of this? They've been trying to legislate us out of existence for the last three years. And up until that time, there's no protection in most states for transgender people in housing, employment, or access to health care. This is the thrust. We're not looking for any special treatment. What the fuck kind of special treatment? We want to end the abuse. Cutting a person's nuts off is not going to do anything to their gender identity. That's something that's in your brain. The testicles have nothing to do with your gender identity. That's the answer. Let's see if we can. Let's see what Anita Green. Okay, that's. Okay, that's all old news. Nothing happening there. Well, there are laws about walking around nude, and what only an ignorant person is going to treat somebody differently because they've decided to change their sex. Okay, only an ignorant person. Well, we're not talking about specific classes of people here. What needs to be added to the law is, the law is stated against discrimination on the basis of sex. But the way it's been interpreted all these years needs to be refined. There's a mountain of precedent rulings that need to be clarified as to like discrimination, sex discrimination because of sexual orientation, and sex discrimination because of gender identity. This is what's in front of the Supreme Court right now. Is that this needs to be clarified in the law. As law stands, it's possible. Chandler, what are you talking about? I had a feeling that was like, okay, well, why is this making all that noise? Oh, it's making a lot of fucking noise. How do I mute this shit? There we go. Well, it's not. There's no special law anybody's looking for. We're just looking to amend the old law to include. The old law is not. It's too general. Just as sex, and sex and gender, sexual orientation and gender identity need to be clearly expressed in the law. It's not even new law. Bye, Chris. Yeah. Well, they're sure looking to do it, Chandler. They're making it possible with it. You need to read. If you were here at the beginning, how did I close that? Shit. Let me get the link for you because you need to at least go read it. They're doing that already. They're okay. So then this is what they're doing. Hopefully that these are administrative things that there was no law. No, like I said, the actual law. No, I was making some dishes for. I'll get to that in a little while. The actual law only says sex, and the movement, the drive behind the Equality Act and all is to get the law amended to include sexual orientation and gender expression. Yeah, I did. I should make another one, I suppose. I have a bunch of pictures. I have some photos I made. Boy, I made some. Well, check out my. I think I even have I do. Actually, Vince here. Like I was saying earlier, I shut up about it and didn't come out until I was like older. And when I did come out, I came out in Tucson, and very little, very little, and I mean extremely little. I had some issues in a couple of retail establishments, and that's it. The government agencies and the general public. You know, I can count on this. I can count on the fingers of my hands the number of times people have said the mean, stupid things to me in public. I mean, I had all the bullshit said to me online, but in public, I'd have fingers left over the number of times that people have said the mean, stupid things to me that some of my siblings have to deal with every day. I have friends that are afraid to go out unaccompanied because of all the taunting and stuff thrown at them. So walking down the street. This sort of hatred. This gets back to this, the education system. It's institutionalized in our whole. It's throughout the whole system. It's the whole Judeo-Christian ethic that they say they're defending. Okay, I muted that channel. What the fuck is making all this noise? I'm gonna leave that channel. Okay, that's fucked up. It's making all sorts of noise, and I don't see anything even showing up in the feed. Leave server. Goodbye. I'm out of here. I'm gonna make some curried shrimp, coconut shrimp, chickpea curry. There's a Saga, Southern Arizona Gender Association, is having a potluck at Reed Park Thursday, and I was talking about what I was bringing. And I didn't get to the main course. I'm bringing shrimp curry, shrimp and chickpeas, and basmati rice and coconut curry. I haven't got a really good way of doing. I don't have a decent tripod. Or what I really need is something to wear the camera, so I can just point the camera what I'm doing. To do foodie stuff, I take pictures of them and post them to Facebook, but I can't. I have some pictures. I made some eggplant parmesan last week. It was just outstanding. Anyway, no, it really should be. It should be like Tucson for queers everywhere. This town is, if nobody gets bent out of shape. I don't know. I really don't know what people are thinking when they look at me, but I don't see. I never catch anybody gawking. I've never caught anybody gawking. I caught one little kid sneaking around in a grocery store getting peeks at me. But that was it. I don't see people have shocked looks or disgusted looks very often. I mean, and I'm not even sure. I don't. I just don't. I don't have a decent way of holding the camera, and I'm too lazy to patch anything together. Eggplant parmesan. Oh, it was yummy. It was so yummy. I made eggplant. It's called patlıcan. It's kind of like baba ganoush without the tahini. That's what it's like. Eggplant, and garlic, and olive oil, and salt, and a little vinegar, and it's a relish. Uh, uh, Here's what I sent to. This is outstanding. This this was one. No, Debbie Jackson, who's the mother of Avery Jackson, who was the girl on trans girl on the National Geographic cover. And Debbie's a recovering Southern Baptist. It just makes a lot of waves. And there's, it's just like the moms, first it was Carol Broshine gets up there and she said, I want to make something perfectly clear to the board. She's talking to the Tucson Unified School District Board about the sex education curriculum, family life curriculum. That she says, I want to make something perfectly clear to the board. This is the validity of our children's sexual orientation and gender identity are not up for debate. To do so would be to discriminate against our own children. And then she led 3/4 of the room in a walkout. And here's Debbie Jackson today. If you haven't listened to a transgender child, don't speak about them. And that was her comment to this video. I should just play it for you. It doesn't, you have to see this video. So she doesn't speak much. It's all these headlines. Here's an 11-year-old transgender girl. I'll give you both videos. That one's scary. Just like it flashes by too fast. And here's one of her actually talking, getting to speak out. Yeah, running out of steam. Okay, well, here's what's up. If you get in a situation where it's not clear to you whether the person, ask. Just ask. People are getting accustomed to introducing themselves. Straight people too. That's always good. I didn't get that upset. I don't get very upset. And I sure let it go quick. But when you're not sure, ask. And use they or their name. Instead of saying he said so and so, say George said so and so. But people are getting accustomed to introducing themselves with how they identify, and and how do you pronounce your name? Is that Vincier? They works for either. If you're not sure, they works. And ask. Just ask. How do you identify? What pronouns do you prefer? How do you prefer to be addressed? Like I prefer not to be called ma'am. Okay, don't call me sir, but I don't want to be called ma'am either. I Ms. Tommy or sister, but unless you want to come to attention and salute, I don't really want to be called ma'am. I'll wear a uniform. Okay. I have to be gentle about that with the Southerners who are like, encultured to it. But I'm Tommy. You know, I understand that people are going to read me as male. I do understand that, and I accept that, and um, I, you know, do the best I can not to get bent out of shape. And I don't usually. And I put up a lot more than most. Um, well, you know, it does, but it's actually been in usage as a singular pronoun for since like 1300 years or something, or since the 1300s. I forget, one or the other. It's been around a while, and the dictionary just like recently upgraded itself to include it. So like, get used to it, man. Or woman, you know, I don't know how you'd identify. Um, I think it's in the 1300s is when they appeared. (1375) Oxford English Dictionary. It was first appeared where it appears in the medieval romance William and the Werewolf. Except for the old style language of that poem, its use of singular they to refer to an unnamed person seems very modern. I don't know what I've always, you know, before I didn't use it a lot, but I know that I've used they as singular for forever myself. It was never any big deal. I was never, you know, it was always an unnamed person, you know, or just no, it wasn't. It could have been someone. No, I know it. They is singular. I'm just nobody ever made a big deal out of it being like, hey, I'm not a he or a she before. That's what's new. uh, that's always best. Um, that that's what's really new about it is that, you know, um, people, nobody's ever like really um, made a big deal out of like non-binary status before. This is something brand new. Um, there's a lot of historical transgender figures, male and female. Um, but I'm hard pressed to think of many that were both, or fluid, or anything, or neither, or anything like that. It's always like a transgender person. Let's see if there's anything worth seeing. No, nothing there. Oh, one of this is oh, here's Jenny Kastner slamming Elizabeth Warren, endorses Trump's economic war in Venezuela, soft pedals far-right Bolivia coup. Yeah, Bolivia coup is American, totally American, OAS, CIA holds the usual. And it's all over the natural resources, naturally. Um, you know, the indigenous socialist government was trying to nationalize everything, and well, the electronics industry just got to have its lithium for the batteries. So like everything else, this is, you know, 10, 15 years in the making. Um, Well, let's hear it for Teen Vogue. Here's oh, this is an old one already. Gender variance around the world over time. It's nothing new. As the transgender community continues to fight for civil rights in the US, one of the most common arguments against progress is that transgender people are a recent phenomenon. Some regard trans people as a symptom of the postmodern condition or identity politics on steroids. Many claim that the struggle for transgender rights is difficult because the concept is still new to many Americans. But the reality is the transgender people have been striving for their rights in America before the 1960s, when a Black trans woman named Marsha P. Johnson and a Latina named Sylvia Rivera and a white trans guy, I forget his name, was credited by many for throwing the first brick during the Stonewall Inn riots. I thought it was shot glasses, ushering in the start of a movement. Just years earlier, transgender people protested police crackdowns on their very existence in San Francisco at the Compton cafeteria riots, and that wasn't even the first disturbance. There are some incidents going back into the late 1940s. Other moments of defiance exist, of course, but remain untold. There's a donut shop thing in Los Angeles that didn't even get reported at all. Earlier, in the late 50s. Half a century of struggle for trans rights in the US is only one thread of a large global tapestry. Employing a variety of genders beyond man and woman across the world, people who don't identify with the gender they were assigned at birth have been working for centuries to guarantee their liberties since ancient times. The recent explosion of visibility might make the fight for trans rights seem like a recent development in the United States, but it's a fight that's been happening here for decades and around the world for centuries. Understanding the history will only help to inform the ongoing struggle for the liberation of gender variant people everywhere. And I think that history is going to be seen that until Judeo-Christian imperialism showed up, that the gender variant people were at least tolerated. With thousands of years of history, documented history, hijras are one of the oldest and best known examples of gender variance. The word is a blanket term applied to people Westerners might define as transgender, intersex, or eunuchs. Throughout history, hijras in Southern Asia have been associated with sacred powers. They delivered blessings at weddings and births and were feared for their powerful curses. The focus on their efforts for recognition and rights typically centers on India. That's in part because British rule dramatically changed the lives of hijras there. The colonial government made the simple act of being a hijra a criminal offense. Hijras responded by forming their own tight-knit communities and developing their own language. In 2014, the Supreme Court of India followed precedents in Nepal, Pakistan, and Bangladesh in recognizing Hijras as a legally designated third gender. That decision helped people in India seeking legal recognition for their identities. Activists claim it doesn't go far enough, though. Many Hijras still find themselves resorting to begging or survival sex work to get by. That happens in America, too. In India politics, Hijra is still used as a public insult. Two-Spirit in North America, for an example of colonially stifled gender variance closer to home, one needs look no further than the various gender identities recognized and celebrated in indigenous tribes. Native Navajo tribes recognize four genders that roughly correlated with cisgender and transgender men and women, using the terms Nadidlihi, Nadlihi for those who transform into femininity, and Didilba for those who transform into masculinity. Mojave people use the terms Alya and Huame to describe similar identities. The Lakota tribe believed the Winkte people among them had supernatural powers like India's Hijras. I forget what the Ojibwe term was for it. The Two-Spirit community has experienced a renaissance of activism lately, but this isn't a recent phenomenon, strictly speaking. Wewa was a famous Ilamana member of the Zuni tribe. She may have been the first out-of-closet gender-variant person to meet a U.S. president when she was introduced to Grover Cleveland in 1886. Well, the term Two-Spirit didn't even exist until the 1990s. And that's the renaissance of activism, has brought all the different nations together. Two-Spirit people in North America have benefited from acceptance within their communities. Already they have reclaimed a piece of their identities by popularizing the term Two-Spirit in place of the French colonial term Berdache. Il Femminillo in Naples and Elagabalus in Rome, even within the boundaries of colonial Europe, gender variant people existed. Documented in paintings from as early as the 18th century, Il Femminillo were individuals assigned male at birth who dressed and behaved like women in Naples, Italy. While largely segregated within the city, Il Femminillo were considered a blessing and good fortune upon the families they were born into. To this day, gender variant pilgrims still venerate the Madonna transformation in the country's southern regions. These are not the only gender variant people in the region's history. Elagabalus was a crowned emperor of the Roman Empire in the 3rd century, but insisted the subject use the term empress and dressed as a woman. There was a pharaoh too, at least one. According to some historical documents, Elagabalus may have even summoned the empire's finest doctors in order to pursue sexual confirmation surgery. In today's Italy, activists can celebrate the recent marriage of Alessia Cinquegrana. Cinquegrana, who was crowned Miss Trans Italy in 2014, is reportedly the first trans woman in the nation to marry a man without first obtaining sexual confirmation surgery. Ancient history and modern struggles. These stories offer up a simple lesson. There are always people who find themselves on the outside of simple binaries. Other examples in the Pacific Islands, South America, reinforce this notion. While I might be tempted to apply a label like transgender to all these people, it's important to respect their sovereignty in defining their own identities. European colonialism was a major force in hurting and erasing gender variant people. Using Western terminology to understand other cultures' gender variance might only result in perpetuating that harm and erasure. Even Americans Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera describe themselves in terminology like transvestite, which is rarely used today. Still, the variety of gender expressions and identities is a testament to a key tenet of Western transgender advocacy. They prove that people have rejected restrictive gender systems throughout history and in our modern age. As many of the examples demonstrate, these experiences often exist outside of a binary, not unlike modern definitions of genderqueer or non-binary. There's more to this. No, I guess that's the end of it. Let's see what kind of madness has been going on here. Um, well, I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm in it for the fence sitters, Vince. Here now, when that validates me. That validates me. I appreciate it. Um, the the fact of it is that people are operating on misconceptions that they've been deliberately fed by forces that are aligning themselves to exterminate transgender people. They really want to exterminate transgender people. It's coming out of Vatican and being disseminated through the evangelical preachers. And then we've got these like radical feminists. They've been at it, the tourists just finally got um, uh, the church has finally got some recognition. There've been that radical trans exclusionary feminist bullshit's been around for years, 40 at least. When I went looking for some history on it, so they're phallophobic. They hate men because of their penises. It's the reaction to rape culture. It's the other side. It's the victim side of rape culture. Um, and so like everybody with a penis is evil, and a woman can't possibly have a penis. But what we need to distinguish is that man and woman, male and female, really only refer to the whether you produce a sperm or an egg. That's what male or female means. Now, that's sex. Gender is on a scale of masculinity versus femininity. It's not one or the other. It presents in a spectrum that the hyper masculine or ultra feminine person is that they want to hold out in the they want to hold out as the ideal man or woman that everybody needs to strive for. It's just a bunch of bullshit. That those people are just a small percentage of the population. The majority of us are kind of like not nearly so masculine or nearly so feminine, and shouldn't even try. It's all get just make yourself crazy. Just be happy with what you got. I'm okay. I'm really, I'm 65 years old. I can't believe I'm 65 years old, and my skin's not all wrinkly, and my hair's a mess, but it's growing back a little bit. But all my important parts work real well. Slacking and weed, lifetime of slacking. So I refuse to stress myself out over things that are unimportant. And I tried the job thing for a long time. But well, I guess it's a good sign when the wheat is so gooey it won't grind. I give up. Well, I've been at it 2 hours, and I'm about out of steam, and I my nose and throat are getting a little raw. So thanks for coming. Thanks for the interesting discussion. Hope to see you all again. Happy day. Bye bye. No, it's a stuffed rat. There are no live animals here. Just I have a few. I have that one stuffed rat and a couple of stone animals that I made. One that I bought, a few that I bought, and then some glass animals, and I think there's porcelain animals, some frogs, but that's a rat. Hey, thanks, Lorelei. Happy day. I'm out of here. Bye bye.